Friday as we head into a long weekend, I think, for most of us. I'm Pam Watts. I'm the Executive Director of NIRSA, and I'm going to be joined in a few minutes by Earl Cabellin from University of Maryland. He's a longtime NIRSA member and leader, and is here today to talk about the Asian Caucus. So just kind of check in with each other, see how things are going. Earl's on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast. We'll kind of see what's going on. So, hi, Earl.
Hi, Pam.
Great to see you.
You too. This is awesome.
Yeah, thanks for doing this with me today.
Yeah.
I think I'm getting faster and faster each time I do this at how to start it and get people joined. So hopefully our viewers are seeing the improvement as I do more and more of these. So happy Friday to you. I hope you're well.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I was just saying this is a little bit of a bi-coastal thing today, right? West Coast, East Coast. So get rid of some of these alerts here. So anyway, why don't you, well, first I want to just say, how are you doing? How are things going?
Yeah, things are going well, Pam. I would say that managing is the word that I've been using lately. Particularly as I'm working from home a lot, just working with, my wife who is working here and having a 5-year-old. So
yeah,
navigating and managing all the things that come with that. But, on top of that, just managing being a full-time employee and being a contributor to my department at the University of Maryland. So yeah, things are going well, all things considered. As I mentioned, I'm leaning into my Gallup's Clifton Strengths positivity during this time, and I think it's been really helpful for me to just check in with myself as a father, as a husband, all the salient identities that I hold true, and so it's just been super helpful with that. But yeah, I appreciate the question. I think it's important to check in, with folks.
Yeah, and I think I love that word managing, right? Because it's not overly negative. It's not, I'm barely surviving, or, although we have those days too, but it just feels right, because it's also not like, I'm fine, right? We're fine, right? Like for a while when someone said, how are you? The correct response, was, I'm fine. And then I think we went through a phase where the, again, correct response was, I'm so busy, right? We wore that busyness badge of honor, right? And now, so I like your response. I'm managing, right? And things are going well. Good days and bad, that's all good. I really like that. Yeah, there's so much to care for, right? To care for our families, to care for our staff, to care for our peers. So I hope everyone at Maryland is doing well and supporting one another and getting through all this for sure.
Yeah, Maryland we are doing our thing, and we're really grateful to have such a positive Vice President of Student Affairs, Dr. Patty Perillo. I think her message to the entire Division of Student Affairs is a powerful one, and that is one that kind of is in our arena of well-being, right?
Right.
Take care of you, give grace, practice empathy.
Right.
And so, for us in Recwell, it really jives with, the message that we try to give out to our students and to our population. So yeah, things are going well, but like many other institutions, their staffs are struggling too, and I think we need to recognize that everyone's in a different place right now, and with everything with the social injustice and even what's happening in the next week with the inauguration, and there's a lot of fear out there, and I think it's important to just kind of again be there in community with folks to support and acknowledge how you're feeling. And so, yeah, just like all of you who are tuning in, we recognize that there's a lot of fear, anxiety, and that's okay to be in that.
Yeah, and I think one of the hopefully lessons we learn or something that we do better, coming out of the pandemic and civil unrest and the spotlight on racial injustice is that we do have to give space for all of that. We, as employers, as individuals, as parents, we just need to give space to process, right? And I think last Wednesday with the events at the Capitol, the violence at the Capitol, many were caught unaware, right? So it's hard to give space ahead of time. But I think we're all looking at the inauguration differently, right? Like we all hope that it goes really, really well, and it might not, right? And no matter where you're at on the political spectrum, just acknowledging that, giving space to that, giving space to, again, your employees, your family, those of us who work in communications, right? What's important to talk about and when is important just to be quiet.
Oh,
So hopefully there are some good lessons learned out of all of this. You mentioned Patty. She is one of the best of the best out there, and certainly a champion of well-being. And I think that's another lesson maybe some of us have learned is our definition of well-being, can and should change. And sometimes it's month to month, sometimes it's day to day, right? What I consider success today, may be different than what I consider success tomorrow in terms of paying attention to my well-being. And I think the pandemic has taught us to really, for me, I'll speak for myself, just acknowledge those small moments of gratitude, those small moments that can fill your bucket just as well as the large ones. It doesn't always have to be the grand achievement, the grand gesture, the grand trip, the grand accomplishment, right? There are moments every single day that fill my bucket up as long as I am open to those. And so working from home, not traveling in my case, has created some good space for that. So goals to hang on to when we go back to, at least go back to the office, go back to traveling, go back to some of those post-pandemic things we all hope to get back to.
yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree with you. Those small wins are the things that we should be celebrating.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've learned the art of rituals throughout this pandemic, and having a 5-year-old upstairs right now who may crash the party, just warning
Totally
everyone
fine.
now. And so we'll go with it, right?
Yeah.
But I think being a new parent to a toddler and the importance of regular schedules for them, right? Like that also does some good for me. Like I know that I'll wake up and get my time in for myself, but then breakfast is on the table at 7:30. Then we have online school at 9.
Yeah.
And so, I find that for me, that's been helpful in addition to, practicing gratitude. But then, again, having rituals have been a little bit easier for me to just kind of manage everything. So,
yeah. No, I wholeheartedly agree. And I think we had so many rituals kind of baked into our lives that we didn't really think about it, right? And then when they all got ripped away, right? Like, work, school, some of those kind of things, it really gave you a chance to think about how much you value them and then build some of your own, right? Build some of your own rituals. I mean, we weren't a family that had a consistent dinner time, and now we do, right? We, at the beginning of the pandemic, wanting to support local businesses, we weren't a family that was consistent about, when we ate in and when we ate out, right? Now, we're all about Takeout Wednesday and, what are we going to pick and who are we going to support and et cetera. So yeah, rituals are so important. Well, speaking of holding space that you mentioned earlier, let's talk about the Asian Caucus that got started last fall. And thank you so much for leading this and getting this kicked off for the community in NIRSA.
Yeah, no, it's really been exciting is the word to help start the group. And, the group came together because honestly, Pam, through your leadership of providing spaces for BIPOC communities. Looking at Seneca's work with the Black men of NIRSA and Stephanie's work with, the Black women of NIRSA. And, as I reflect back, like, I don't remember a time, and I could be wrong, but, a space for Asians who are a part of the Campus Rec family, right? And, sitting in the BIPOC caucus and learning that in my mind, it was like, why not the Asian Caucus, right? And so it was a space that I was like, okay, now's the time. Like everything's happening. And in more of the ways of like, how can we support our Black colleagues, right? As Asians. And so the group came together. I was very, very appreciative that, we were able to contact those who identified as Asian and just send the invitation and see what happens, right? And out of that group, I think a third out of like, nearly 70 members answer the call to be in community, right?
Yeah.
And that was pretty awesome to see the group come together in the fall with just like different experiences, like some
Mm-hmm.
directors, like
Mm-hmm.
the Kevin Georges of the
Mm-hmm.
world, and the Pam Sues who are
Mm-hmm.
now like trailblazing in the student affairs world.
Yeah.
And so there was also these younger professionals that I wouldn't have otherwise interfaced with,
Mm-hmm.
honestly,
Mm-hmm.
had this group not come together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, that's the beauty of all this stuff, because now there's a pipeline of young professionals that are
Mm-hmm.
Asian that have people that they can be coached by or mentored
Mm-hmm.
by some
Mm-hmm.
of those leaders that exist
Mm-hmm.
today in NIRSA. And so it's been a really good space. And again, I use the word, it's an amoeba, so it's
Mm-hmm.
been like free flowing.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I wanted to kind of set the tone with is, this is not the Earl Cabellin show from the University of Maryland. You can you can come as you are. You don't
Yeah.
need to be an expert. You don't
Yeah.
need to know. Like, I'm not even an Asian activist. Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm still learning some of the things within the Asian community, at least within the Filipino diaspora, of
Mm-hmm.
being Asian and Asian American.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, like the group is, we came together and just got to know each other and
Mm-hmm.
really talked about things like, what are some of the things that we need in terms of
Mm-hmm.
representation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how can we see more people that look like me or you or whoever,
Mm-hmm.
that are in leadership roles,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I think the conversations have been really good, but
Mm-hmm.
also, there's a lot of conversations around some of the injustices that we face as Asians,
Mm-hmm.
the model minority myth,
Mm-hmm.
this
Mm-hmm.
idea that like Asians are the cream of the crop, they get it right. And
Mm-hmm.
so it really denigrates the BIPOC community.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not aware about the model minority myth, it really does hurt others.
Mm-hmm.
And having conversations around that as a caucus is important. But then, having a call to action with this group. I mean, we're talking about, getting money for the foundation to fund scholarships for
Mm-hmm.
AAPI groups, and so Asian students who want to be in the profession have access to a scholarship, and attend conferences and
Mm-hmm.
network and grow. So again, it's been a fantastic fall semester, to say
Mm-hmm.
the least, and really exciting to see where the future takes this group.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really excited. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we, really appreciate your leadership on this. It breaks my heart to think about, all the years in NIRSA where, there were probably some fabulous Asian students, GAs, even maybe young professionals who at one point or another got turned out of the profession, right? Either because they didn't see themselves in leadership or they had, a bad experience in one way, shape, or form. And that happens in a lot of minority communities, right? And so I think having these spaces, building these communities, and using that, there was a good comment I think from Kevin about, how do we connect into the identity-based student groups? Because I've said on other Instagram lives, I really believe that Campus Rec can play a strong and leading role in diversifying the faculty staff on a college campus. And, as the student body is diversifying when it comes to race and ethnicity. And I think, who is it? The Witchy group just released their 10th version of the enrollment projections, right? And it's, trending the same, and all the predictions about the diversity of the student body in higher ed is still holding true. And so, we have our part to do as higher education professionals for sure. And I feel like NIRSA and Campus Rec professionals have an opportunity to do it faster, and do it, thoughtfully, in terms of recruiting and promoting and showing leadership among diverse groups in the field, right? Which then should help those students, feel like higher ed is a place for them, and they can come and be successful, and they will be supported appropriately, right? And have those learning environments. The faculty, I mean, the faculty in other areas need to change too, but it takes a long
Yep.
time to change the faculty because the road to being a faculty member takes a long time, right?
Yep.
So this is good. You
Yeah.
had,
So I'm sorry, you
go
had
ahead.
mentioned, one thing that kind of popped in my mind
Mm-hmm.
as you were talking was topics that we have been talking about as a caucus that really has been affecting some of the members is around mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for those of you who are tuning in,
Mm-hmm.
you just Google the statistics. I don't know off the top of my head, but
Mm-hmm.
the mental health crisis within the Asian diaspora is
Mm-hmm.
alarming.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly, for me as a Filipino, and I'll own this, that even within my sphere of influence with family, friends, there's a stigma around mental health
Yeah.
within the Filipino community.
Yeah.
Highly Catholic, so it's like you pray to God,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't deny, but like there's more to it, right? But
Mm-hmm.
there's this stigma, right?
Mm-hmm.
That like you put your head down and you just deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to have some conversations about it. And I think, hearing some of the stories within our caucus around that is a little troubling. And I think we need to, at least within our own diaspora, it's important to talk about. So yeah, I mean, like this narrative of mental health again is more globally a problem, but more prevalent in the Asian community just as much. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, and this is why it's so important to have these groups, because as we do work in well-being or mental health, broadly, the actual solutions for any group of people is going to look a little different, right? Because the concerns are different. I mean, there's certainly the medical side to mental health, but the, like you said, the culture, the context around that, are you able to ask for help or not? Even I think some of the causes of anxiety and depression are different based on your lived experience and the cultural truths or myths that you've been taught around mental health and well-being. Yeah, so this is really important. Yeah, and like I said, I really appreciate your leadership in this group. It was a bit of a leap of faith to start these and say, hey, start it, but what you want to do, where you want to go, what the group wants to talk about, how frequently you meet, all of that was left up to the different caucuses. But there's been great energy. I think people have leaned into where they need to lean into, and then it'll morph through time. And I think as NIRSA, NIRSA, the Royal NIRSA, we're here to support, to lend, like support and resources and connection and kind of facilitate all of this. I mean, right down to literally like, here's your Zoom account, or, here's an opportunity at the annual conference or things like that, but not wanting to overly script anything. So far, I'm seeing that the different caucuses are developing each as they need to. There's no, especially in the sports world, this isn't a competition, right? This is, and everyone doesn't need to look and feel and do the same things. So I've been really pleased with the progress on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, you said it best. Like, again, the whole competition piece is not even within the sphere of discussion. It's the amplification of the Latinx community with what Victoria is doing, and like, I think that's important to know that, like, competing with each other, we're just creating these spaces because, there's just something to be said about being in the same room or virtual room of someone that looks like you and maybe can understand. So, I mean, again, I don't think people realize the level of support that you have provided and how you've all trailblazed these groups to come together, and it is appreciated that you guys can host it rather than me trying to do it on my end, but also just getting out of the way, I guess, is and not dictating the agendas and letting us lead. And that's the great thing about NIRSA. It's one of the things that I've always appreciated about the association, and allowing members to really lean in and do the work, right? And NIRSA will be there to support you. I think again, working with you on the strategic planning team and having that opportunity was fantastic. but even just serving in the leadership roles within the association, I've come to love NIRSA. I have been indebted to the association because I wouldn't be here today had it not be for NIRSA. So I believe in Will Trent's words of peace, love, and NIRSA. So well, shout out to my boy Will Trent.
No, that was brilliant of Will, and we've borrowed heavily and try to always give him attribution, right? Yeah, I mean, I appreciate your words about, NIRSA and the leadership and even me, trying to make good decisions around where to lean in and where to get out of the way. And, I think to some extent it's a daily, weekly, monthly decision, right? And I do think, I think through the work on the History and Legacy Task Force, we'll get into telling the stories and the more complete history of NIRSA, right? Because I don't think that was always the case. I think in NIRSA's past, there was very much a box that we were all supposed to fit into and a way we were supposed to behave. And that really was just detrimental in so many ways. So we're trying to stay more open, try to give space for the members to come together and do the good work that they need to do and have, headquarters and staff be more in that kind of infrastructure. If you've studied collective impact, kind of that backbone organization. I think as members and volunteer leaders, you don't need to spend your time on the unsexy stuff, right? You need to have that space to bring your brain, bring your networking, bring your lived experience and create community, create resources, create education opportunities. And that's the right mix for NIRSA in terms of where staff spends their energy, where members spend their energy in this organization. We will, I mean, I have to hold myself back sometimes from not running to all the caucuses and asking for something, right? But, the only plug I'll make right now is, the committee appointments are coming up. We do pay attention to gender and race, at least as it's reported in the database. And we are going to each of the caucuses to really encourage folks to apply because while we're not the worst, but we could be better in terms of representation in our different committees, and and we need the applications to do that. I'll also put in a plug that if you're willing, please include your demographics in your member profile because we are relying on those to try and make better decisions so that for representation.
No, and that's all the great stuff that again people don't see, and I know that you have pinged me for leadership roles and Leah and David and those are the things that matter, right? Like you create these relationships with people and then they nudge you, right? We were all brought into this profession because someone nudged us. Right. And I guess like for me and my call to action for the Asian Caucus is to look at those younger staff, the Dominique Sack at Youngstown, Maria and Tim at Princeton, like Chris Sato at George Mason, like young, talented professionals who deserve to be at the table winning awards, William Watson Awards, scholarships. And, I think for us, those who have kind of been there, it's kind of our calling to give back to folks so we are represented. And so, but again, like you say that, we could do a better job, but I think, with those little micro nudges, go a long way. And I think we as a profession need to do, and I think that's on us as professionals too, right? It's not just Pam and HQ and the board. I think it's all of us. We all have to take stake and, hey, there's a game changer. We need to just ping that person and do great work. And so, no, I agree with you. And since I am a few years older than you, I will say that there comes a point, I think, where you have to recognize that it is no longer your turn to lead. It is your turn to champion others, right? And usually there's some level of maybe being, available in the wings, as a consultant if needed, not pulling the puppet strings. And I've watched a lot of really, wonderful leaders in NIRSA, make that
pivot. I'm going to say pivot. My other not favorite word is unprecedented. If we have to say unprecedented one more time, I think I'm going to lose it. Anyways, that's an aside. But yeah, there comes a point, and again, not in all areas or all at once, right? Like, there are areas of your life where it's time to champion others, and then there's areas of your life where, others, who are maybe a little older, it's time for them to champion you in certain leadership roles. And I think, organizations or even individuals generally can do a good job at that, but sometimes we forget and we hang on a little bit too long. So that's certainly another thing I have my eye on in NIRSA, as we make, leadership appointments and recruiting people to serve in different positions. The good news is there's a lot of really wonderful people out there that are willing and capable and have the energy and excitement to do great work in NIRSA. It's just our job to make sure the door's not only open, but we're truly welcoming them in. So
I couldn't have said it best. That's yeah.
Yeah. Well, any final thoughts before we sign off? Any big plans for the weekend?
Oh, no, not at all. We're in the house hunting, and so, just touching up the house maybe, but the weekends are given to Elijah. It's our time with him, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Yeah. But how much family means to me. So
I know. I almost wished he crashed our Instagram, right? Because I haven't seen him in a few years.
I'm surprised. Those Oreos that I bribed him with prior to this must have worked.
They worked too well.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This was really good. Thanks for all the people that joined us on Instagram Live. If you think your friends would enjoy this will be on our Instagram account later and then on YouTube after that. So thank you, everybody. And thanks, Earl, and have a great weekend.
Thank you, Pam.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.